Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Mastery by English podcast. In today's lesson or episode, we have a very, very special guest, Hanny Nussen, and with her, we are going to be discussing different aspects that have to do with national identity, globalization, the new world order, and the different values, okay, which prevail in the West and in other countries. I think I'm pretty positive, okay, that this this conversation is going to be extremely enlightening, and I hope, okay, that you can learn things from it, and you can also, learn extremely interesting expressions, okay. So stay tuned, and I hope you like the interview. Okay. Hello, honey. How you doing?
Hello, I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm good too. Okay, so
Good.
well, let me, guys, girls, introduce you to my buddy, Hanny Nussen. Is that right? Nussen?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, it's great. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you come from? Because, I thought that your presence in the podcast would be, would be somehow credible because
Hopefully.
yeah, not only do you speak you're a native English speaker, but you're very knowledgeable and very curious about things. So I'm pretty sure that you are not indifferent to what is going on during
No,
this.
definitely not.
So
Yeah, so as a brief introduction, I'll say that I'm from Canada. However, I've been living and working in Spain for the last 5.5 years, and I work as an English teacher. And I have experience teaching a wide range of students, ranging from little children to adults of different ages, teaching them all kinds of things, speaking about all kinds of topics that you can imagine. And I've been loving every minute. I think it's been really enriching, hopefully for my students as well
yeah.
as for me. And that's about it. I'm looking forward to speaking about this topic because I have not only a lot of opinions, but also a personal attachment to it. So
Okay.
I'm looking forward to speaking about that as
I'm
well.
looking forward to the conversation too. Okay, I'm looking forward to
Perfect.
your really valuable opinions. Just to start with, that was something I was mentioning or talking about with my students.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, guys, girls, you might be. I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware that we are living extremely, I don't know, relevant historical times. And because I'm not sure if and the things like we have experienced some of those during the last decade. Okay, I'm not sure if you have any recollections of 9/11, but I was, like in the, in a period of like 20 years, okay, we have experienced, like, personally, those kind of historical events are sure, okay, likely to go down in history books, such as 9/11, the rise of radical Islam, Islamism, and now we had, of course, COVID, okay, like this worldwide pandemic, which I guess that changed everything. And now I'm not sure. I don't want to be pessimistic. I don't want to, make this super, ominous predictions. But I don't want to think that we are in the preamble of a third world war. Okay, but it doesn't look very promising. I'm sure. So do you? I'm pretty sure you agree that we are living very relevant and,
Yeah. I mean, I was very young when 9/11 happened. However, I do have a very vivid memory of where I was when it happened. I was in my living room at my parents' house. I think I was about 7 or 8 years old. And we were watching, I think like anyone else in the world was, everything happening live on TV. So while I was very young, I feel like it was very formative for me, in the sense that it was kind of like the first traumatic event that, while I didn't live through it myself, I felt as if there was this collective trauma that the world experienced following this event. And it kind of set the tone for the next 20 years. after that. And I feel like it still reverberates throughout. People mention it as if it was yesterday. And yeah, I think it set the tone for the 21st century. For sure.
I definitely think it basically, it was a turning point. Okay. It was, I don't know, like, I think that in the previous years, okay, I think that ties into the topic that we are going to speak about today. Is during you are very young to even remember this, but you hadn't been born back then. I was young myself, okay, during the 80s, but I remember that when I was very young, okay, there was this somehow this fear of because there's this Cold War going on, especially between the Soviet Union and the socialist regimes, which were kind of like affiliated with the Soviet Union, and then the Western world, like NATO and basically all those countries that would associate with the United States. There was kind of this open or kind of confrontation between those two worlds. So the fear of the new the likelihood of a nuclear war was not something like unthinkable. It was something that was actually in the cards. Okay. And I think that definitely that disappeared with the collapse of the Soviet Union and I would say everything and all the countries which were basically at the other side of the Iron Curtain, and that collapse at the beginning of the 90s. Okay, so and especially in 1991 was like a very traumatic year for the interests of the Soviet Union and Russia and all this kind of like satellite countries. And for some time, okay, there was a complete and full out and absolute domination and dominance and hegemony of the US and the Western world itself. But I think that started, I agree with you that probably started to change a little bit. Okay, the seeds, okay, of that, probably the collapse of the Western world were planted, okay, in 9/11.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I was not alive in the 80s. However, I've heard from my parents and my grandparents who were alive at that time, and in fact my mom and her side of the family is from the Soviet Union. So
really?
Yeah, they my mom was born in Ukraine, actually.
Oh my God.
But they lived in Ukraine and Russia throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s. And they left right after the fall of the Soviet Union because of everything that precipitated afterwards. It was a mess. And so I've heard from personal experience of my mom and her parents exactly what kind of turmoil went on. And I do think that it was a definitive win for the West, you could say. They've defeated communism, and it seemed pretty clear cut that perhaps, communism was dead, the West was going to reign strong forever. And I do think that is changing, or at least it doesn't seem as obvious it doesn't seem like Western powers, whatever you want to call them, the West, the Western hegemony is going to continue to be as powerful as perhaps they were 20, 30 years ago.
It is evident, okay, that there's many threats to that, okay, and there's really emerging countries like I think China is an obvious example,
right?
But so is Russia, or Russia is kind of, and the case of Russia is interesting because while it is not a strong economic contender, okay, I have just heard that Russia's GDP is slightly above Spain's, okay, and the population is much larger, and but it is a strong military contender, okay, and as you can tell, they hold, they are basically they spare no so basically they are not going to hold themselves back. It looks like they are blatantly and openly hostile, and basically they're in for the kill, okay. So it's kind of like it's scary, okay. So and that ties into reminds me of the first question I would like to discuss, okay. Let me check the And that is the question says, okay, one of the questions I wanted to discuss with you says some countries instill a sense of patriotic belonging in their citizens more than others. Who's right? My impression, I'm going to tell you what I think, and I think it's one of the underlying causes of, I'm not sure, I'm not stating that the West has to, collapse or, but it's definitely declining, as you say, okay, that obvious hegemony is no longer, going on, okay? There are many other contenders. And I think that those other countries like China and Russia and all the satellite countries, especially China and Russia, are emerging and are kind of like gaining dominance because their sense of patriotism and the way they have instilled that in their citizens is so different from the West. Yeah. Honestly, the impression I have is, that because of many social changes and progress, probably aspects which were, I don't know, like associated to kind of like old times, such as the patriarchy or masculinity or patriotism, were seen, have been seen in the West something like, obsolete, outmoded. Okay, and I guess that in those countries like China and Russia, they don't have the same, they don't have the same attitude towards those concepts. Okay, and honestly, the impression I have, I'm not sure if that's the case with Canada, but I suspect there is something going on because I have spoken to some American people, and they said that trend is also going on in the US as well. Is that for some time? That's my impression. Okay, so we have been taught here lately that you have to somehow feel embarrassed, or there's something toxic about being a man. Patriarchy is bad, and you need to hate your country. Okay, there's something wrong with your country, and there's like oppression everywhere in developed countries, and whereas like in countries where there's like objectively less freedom, they're taught to embrace and love and defend and fight for the country. So right. What is your impression about this?
I mean, I am often conflicted about this topic because I think that patriotism, I mean, it's nice to be proud of your country, to be proud of where you were born or where you live. And of course, that patriotism in the past has been the reason why people have been willing to die for their country, to improve it. And so I do think that patriotism inherently is a good thing. However, in some of these countries that you mentioned, well, first, to address what you said about the US and Canada and these Western countries that, in the past have had more traditional values, let's say, the patriarchy was something that was never talked about. It was just accepted for how things were, but now it's a hot topic and people tend to be against, I'll say women and progressive people tend to be against this idea of patriarchy and traditional, control of society by men, et cetera, et cetera. I do think that this and other progressive ideas have perhaps decreased the fervent patriotism that people used to have in the past. And in a way, I suppose that it's a bad thing. However, I do think that questioning what your country does and not accepting everything it does is a good thing, just because it's your country doing it is good, because it's good to be critical about everything. It's good to question things, why they happen, what the objective is. So it's hard to say. And you also said that in other countries that are against the US and against the West, such as China and Russia, citizens seem to be more patriotic. And I think that's the truth. I think that those citizens are more patriotic, but I don't know if they have a choice in the matter. Yeah. I think that they're there's a whole indoctrination that happens from the moment they're born. There's propaganda. So of course, I do think to an extent they have a choice. Like they can choose to believe what they believe. However, showing outward patriotism is kind of the default, because you cannot show dissent, right? Okay. So my short answer is, I think patriotism nationalism, if we get into that, the difference between that, it's a mixed bag. It can be a good thing and a bad thing depending on how it's used, right?
Yeah. But the things that I tend to, I think there is a conceptual difference between nationalism and patriotism. Okay, so I think that nationalism has like a more pejorative connotation,
right?
But however, I understand what you said, that in some countries, okay, it's a mixture, like Russia, China, North Korea, or whatever,
right.
like really totalitarian and authoritarian regimes. They don't have any choice. It's a mixture of like, this message, okay, or this narrative, okay, prevailing and education in the media. And of course, and the consequences of not like subscribing, okay, to that patriotism, or even I think I think that one thing is, kind of feeling proud about your country, well, or being grateful, okay, that you were born in a country with certain, privileges.
Values.
Yeah, but another thing is, I think that is in this more, I would say, authoritarian regimes. It's mixed. It's not only that you worship, okay, the land, okay, your motherland, your fatherland. It is that you also that goes hand in hand with worshiping and and worshiping and revering the leaders, okay, the rulers. Okay, it's kind of like the admiration you feel for your country is mixed with admiration and devotion, okay, for the leader, for the government. Okay, so it's kind of like, it's hard just to distinguish like the country, the nation, and the government.
Definitely, yeah, for sure.
And one of the things, like, for example, you mentioned that it is while it is good to feel proud of your country, that at the same time that is not incompatible with questioning the things, or the foreign policy, or any kind of policies that your country carries out and you're against, that you think are unfair, because that is something that I think has changed. Okay, and I think, again, I have mixed feelings about this. I'm going to try to expose them, because in the past, okay, something that would struck me that was kind of like, that would basically, I would find strange, awkward about Americans, is this kind of blind patriotism. Okay, so if the soldiers, whatever, they embarked on a mission abroad, okay, and they fucked up, or they did some kind of questionable things, like pillaging, or they were kind of like they brutally repressed the locals, whatever. So nobody would question the troops. Okay, it's like, yeah, we are with the troops. Okay,
right.
But that is wrong. Okay, that is objectively wrong. They are killing innocent people. Okay, so I was like, why are the because that was something completely completely non-existent in Spain. Okay, so we probably because of having our past, or recent past, or I mean, we are a very anti-militaristic country. So this blind adherence, and devotion for the troops. Okay, so whatever the troops, like one of the most kind of like respectable, okay, institutions of America.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like, wow, what is this? Okay, so I understand that shift, people are now questioning more, and they are not just like blindly accepting that, so they can tell good from wrong, and so they don't have this like blind devotion for the army, for example.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that blind devotion to anything is a good thing. As I mentioned before, I believe that patriotism inherently is a good thing, because I believe that if you are patriotic, you are proud, or want to be proud of your country. So you believe in the betterment of your country, which means addressing its flaws, right? If you're a true patriot, I believe that you can admit when your country does something wrong, because you want to fix that in order to create a better country. I don't think that being a patriot means that you ignore the bad things that your country does because you don't believe that your country can do any wrong, right? I don't believe that's being patriotic. I think that's being delusional. So I think that a lot of people in any country, really, some of them tend to be blindly adhering to whatever their government does because they believe it's the best thing that can be done, and that they can do no wrong. And other people still love their country, still are proud and grateful to be in that country while criticizing their government's actions and what's happening in foreign policies within the country itself. So I believe that there's two groups of people. I'm sure that both groups consider themselves patriotic, but I believe that the latter group, which can allow itself to criticize things that are wrong with its country and its government, are truly patriotic.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, but my only, so in the light of the current events, what I think that is the, I don't know, I don't believe in blind adherence. Okay, I'm, call me a libertarian. That's
right.
probably the ideology that I kind of subscribe to some extent. I'm not, I'm just myself, so
yeah.
I don't know, like I don't believe in dogmas, and I understand that is to my view, okay, the right path to go. Okay, it's like, again, being, having critical thinking and being critical of what people do independently, because like something that this exacerbated patriotism is something, or let alone nationalism, is something that I was never able to get, because I mean, again, being born in one or another place is just an arbitrary, a random act.
Right.
Okay? Your parents had sex in a given place. You're born. Okay, that's
it.
You
had no control over it.
You had no control. You had no choice. Okay, so you cannot really take ownership, or take kind of, you shouldn't feel that proud for that alone. Okay.
Right.
And so I agree that is the right, having this kind of critical, mindset or attitude is the right, direction. However, and in the light of the current events, okay, how like China, Russia are gaining ground. I'm not, I don't know if that is weakening, okay, the West, okay, because like rationality is is prevailing in the West, okay, like people are more and more critical, but at the same time, like those countries whose citizens, okay, blindly support the leader, blindly defend the nation, they're willing to die and to kill for the nation, and have a much more, I don't know, belligerent attitude, okay, and evangelistic, kind of like foreign policy, are the ones who are getting around. So it's like an unfair, it's kind of like cheating in a game, like
how is it cheating?
I mean, it's like cheating is like, subscribing or being a good progressive, like rational citizen. Is you are in a losing position, okay, against this, countries or whose citizens or the mindset, which are not like ruled by more, I would say, humanitarian, okay, or progressive principle, okay. So it's like you and I are gonna fight, okay, but you punch me, I don't punch back, okay. So you are in a winning position. You understand?
So you're saying that the West is going to lose because they are unwilling to show their power, or they're not willing to fight back?
No, because like all this narrative, I think I agree that the right, the right path, the right direction is to not blindly support your country. Okay, so even if you consider yourself a patriot, or if you're grateful for having been born in a given place, that you do not like blindly support and are willing to die and to kill. So it's kind of, you are a more developed, okay, progressed, like a more developed or a more, I know, like advanced person, okay. But at the same time, you are, okay, this lack of patriotism, of like, belligerent patriotism, puts you in a disadvantageous position, okay, when it comes to the other countries and governments who have more primitive like values, if you mean.
But I do think that those primitive, I mean, I don't know, that sounds like a pejorative, maybe a traditional value of like, let's physically fight the enemy, let's show them our pure firepower, I think that's obsolete, that's outdated. I think the West has shown, especially in this crisis, this war, that fighting with soldiers on the ground is not the answer. That I do think that it is obvious that at the moment Russia is fighting a losing battle, in my opinion.
You think
because
so?
Yes, because I think that this conflict has shown that the West, Europe, along with the US and Canada, forms still a powerful hegemony, not because they have a stronger military and more weapons, but because they are able to negotiate with each other, join forces, create alliances that are far more powerful together than Russia and China and their friends. I don't know. I believe that this conflict has shown that traditional warfare is no longer the method to win more power. I think that it's more achievable by forming alliances, talking and forming relationships, whether they're economical, trade relations, whatever you might want to say, that it's a far more effective way of getting more power and influence in this day and age. I don't believe that warfare with soldiers on the ground is the way to go anymore. So with patriotism, I don't think that patriotism is as relevant anymore, like the belligerent patriotism that you just mentioned, because I do believe that fewer people, at least in the US, Canada, and Europe, are or would be willing to give their lives in a physical war for their country. I think that they would support democratic kind of choices, sign alliances, that kind of thing, and they would support that. But I don't think people in Europe and the US and Canada would give their lives to fight. So I don't think that's the kind of warfare that's relevant anymore.
Yeah, but I it's hard to disagree with that. Okay, and I definitely subscribe that would be ideal. Okay, that all conflicts would be solved by negotiations, diplomacy, and whatnot. However, do you think that I mean, because to some extent, okay, I'm correct. I mean, to some extent, my impression is that has a little bit of wishful thinking, in the sense that, do you think that is the right mindset, that is the right attitude, okay, that's being more humane, okay, but do you think that is going to dissuade to stop the Russians from kind of like doing what they're doing in Ukraine? Okay, it's like so for me, do you think that is going to deter Vladimir Putin in his expansionist ambitions? Because like it looks like he won't stop there.
Right.
So what can we do? Like in the end, like they're like you're launching missiles, and they are kind of like wreaking havoc. They are they're kind of like marching with tanks and just like killing people.
I think Putin is definitely a special case, because he doesn't seem to be playing the same game that everybody else is playing. I think that's
what I meant.
Yeah. So I mean, it's true that if you were talking about Russia as a country and its government, I think that it would be possible to negotiate with Russia in terms of signing treaties, whatever it takes to appease them, make sure they're happy with whatever agreement we decide on, and avoid war altogether. However, because Putin seems to be a dictator that's nearing the end of his life, I feel like it's hard to negotiate with terrorists, as they say. So I don't believe that. I mean, it might be true that the only way to stop Putin is with violence, but I don't agree that in general that's the truth anymore. Dealing with countries like Russia or China, I do think that the better way forward is with negotiations, sitting next to each other at a table and talking this through. That's what I believe. But yes, Putin is a special case, and I don't know exactly how to stop him. I don't think anybody really knows how to stop him right now without using violence. So I don't know. I mean, I don't have the answer to that, but in general, I do believe that the future is not in getting soldiers to fight each other on the ground.
Of course, like, and sending like and deploying soldiers who are going to probably wouldn't kill each other, okay, if they were not kind of like commanded, okay,
exactly.
By someone else. It's like so unfair, okay, even for the soldiers, okay, they are fighting a war that they probably don't want to fight, okay. And the things like you mentioned something very interesting, that would be the best way, the better way going forward. But with a guy like Putin, you cannot negotiate, because he doesn't seem like just to come to reason. However, Putin is there, and the current leader has been the president of Russia for 22 years straight. So I mean, he's not going to disappear. Okay, it's like, and to me, the impression I get is that he's got a point of no return. It's like
I do believe that as well. I do believe that as well.
So it's like he's got to the point where I mean, because I cannot imagine that in, say, in 2 years, okay, he's going to be hanging out with the rest of the presidents of the free world, or, like, going with Macron in France, with Justin Trudeau in Canada, with Biden, whoever is ruling the US.
Yeah,
I can't imagine him giving a speech in the UN anymore. So it looks like he's going for broke,
Yeah. So I mean, what do you think is the best way to deal with him?
Honestly, I don't know. It's like it again. So at some point, we will talk about the narrative around revolving Putin, okay? Because I think that has changed as well. And I don't know. I guess it's hard because I don't know. I'm not a political or economic pundit. I don't have all the information. I have I just try to search, okay, for information from varied sources, okay, because again, the dominant narrative is that, well, he's an evil guy, whatever.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, but there's like some sources, okay, that I somehow believe. I trust to some extent. Okay, I think they are somehow trustworthy, and they are kind of like skeptical about this, kind of like unanimous narrative about like Russians evil, blah blah blah. Okay,
yeah.
So I don't know, and so what can be done with Putin? It's complicated. I don't know. It's like, again, the threat, or I'm not sure to which extent economic sanctions are going to be a deterrent.
Yeah,
I think that might make a dent on the Russians, or that might eventually turn the Russian people against Putin. But as they don't have free speech, okay, and they have to repress themselves, it's kind of complicated to see how the anger and the discontent is going to dissuade Putin in any way.
Yeah, I think the West, NATO, the European and US bloc is kind of between a rock and a hard place, because I think that, of course, they do not want to start a World War III, right? So they want to avoid putting any soldier on the ground,
of course,
and really actively joining the conflict, right? So they can't really do anything that would actually stop Putin in his tracks, immediately, because I'm sure that if any European nation joined, or the US joined the conflict, it would be over tomorrow, but they can't do it because we want to avoid World War III. We have, been in a relative period of peace for decades now, due to organizations like the EU, the UN, NATO, right? Like, they have kept peace in Europe, at least, which, in the past were constantly fighting with each other. So, I mean, they've achieved peace due to their policies and negotiations with each other. So I think they're trying to keep this same point of view with Russia. They want to try to solve things without violence. However, as you said, Putin doesn't seem to be persuaded by any of these other negotiation methods. He seems to only be perceptive to either appeasement or come fight me, bro, like this kind of attitude. And so I really don't know what the best measures that NATO can take, the UN can take, other than trying to get them to sit at a table and talk it through, because the only other way is to start World War III. So I don't know, which, how can you deal with that,
I think, okay, because there's some hope in something, that I was apart from the ultimate, prevalence of diplomacy and democratic and the the search of a peaceful resolution. I think that there's hope not only in economic sanctions, which for sure might have a deterrent component to them, but also honestly the role of China. Okay, because I think that Putin or Russia, not Russia, but Putin is taking for granted that they're going to have an unconditional ally in China. But I don't think that China, being this super burgeoning, emerging economic superpower, because essentially the world's factory, is interested in, unleashing, or contributing to World War III.
Yeah.
Understand? Because they want to sell goods, okay, and they're providing I'm not sure the number of goods or the percentage of the share of goods that they put in the marketplace, okay.
Yeah.
So if a war is devastating, okay.
Right.
If a war leaves Europe or the West or whatever countries completely ravaged, Okay, I mean, you're going to have an impoverished societies and who are not able to consume their products. So I think that in that sense, Russia, the Russian government, Putin, Kremlin, has got a much more belligerent, aggressive attitude. But I don't think that China is, subscribes to that. Okay, I think that they take for granted that they're going to have an unconditional ally. But I think that they might be dissuaded. Okay,
by profit.
Yeah,
they don't want to lose their profit. Yeah,
sure.
It comes down to. It's I mean, I don't think that China needs Russia. So in the end, if it comes down to allying with either Russia or the West, I think China would choose the West, because in the end, its Western clients are the ones who are giving China its profit margin. Russia, in my opinion, Russia is a dying empire. In resources, it's one of the richest regions in the world. However, the way that its government is functioning, it seems like it's not able to extract that profit from all of the resources they have. I think they act, whether it's Putin or the Kremlin, I think they're acting like a dying empire. I think that they're doing everything in desperation in order to gain whatever little power they have, in the world market, in the world, competition context, for power, for income, for whatever you want to call it. They want to try to win the game. Clearly they can't, because they're outpowered by basically every other nation, developed nation on earth. I think they're acting like a desperate dying empire, which is the same reason that I think they won't be able to be negotiated with, at least Putin, and Putin seems to be the one with the last word. So I don't think that, as long as Putin is in charge of what's happening, I don't think that negotiation will be possible. I do believe that the only way to deal with him is for someone to take him out. But again, I don't know if that's something that can happen in the 21st century. It has happened before, but I just don't know who's going to be in charge of it. But that's the only way I think this is going to be over.
But, so the things like, I don't think that you can put down Putin, okay, as they put down, Osama bin Laden, okay.
Right. No, they're not going to send SEAL Team 6.
You're talking about a guy who's guarded, okay, by hundreds and thousands of and it's got kind of like undisputed military power. It's complicated. Okay, that ties into some of another question that that I had thought of originally before even the Ukrainian and Russian conflict broke out, and that is whether, and I understand that the only thinking about this idea sounds kind of like, I don't know, somehow racist or something, or at least Eurocentric. But do you think that there are objectively cultures which are superior to others? Okay, like for example, like cultures, but I'm talking like democratic cultures, like the Judeo-Christian civilization and traditions, okay, and versus and again the importance they give to democratic liberal values and
you're talking about like just customs and traditions.
I am talking about like for example, even though you to some extent even though there might be like some differences between Canadian culture and Spanish culture, for sure. Okay, but we both belong to the idea of a liberal democracy, where people can elect their rulers, okay, the governments, and apparently there is kind of like something something similar to a separation of powers, free speech in theory, but again, and there's countries where that does not exist, okay, or where like rights of women are respected, rights of minorities are respected, rights of people with different sexual orientation are respected, and there's countries which don't subscribe to those views, okay, in that, and there's many of them, okay. Do you then believe, or that do you think then, okay, that there's some cultures which are superior to others?
I think superior is a problematic term. I think that there are cultures that, of course, I would prefer to live in. There are some cultures I disagree with heavily. There are some cultures I would be afraid to live in, to be in. Saying superior, I think, is not the best term to use, because
very on PC, right? It's very on PC.
It's not that even that it's PC. I really don't believe that any group of people is superior to another group. I believe that throughout history, different groups have, gone through ebbs and flows of their values and what kind of policies they may have. Like in the medieval ages, when Europe was, regressive in the dark, there was no science, there were no progressive values whatsoever. It was in the dark, literally, in terms of information and the progress society was making, while in Muslim countries, in the Muslim empires, science was thriving, math was thriving. You could say that then they were more progressive. So were they superior then? No, I believe that culture.
I think so. I think they were more superior then.
So how would you define a superior culture?
Okay, a superior culture is a culture where you have, the freedom of the individual is respected. Okay, and freedom of irrespective of your gender or sex, sexual orientation, religious, adherence, opinion even. So if countries, where that is possible, or countries where that kind of mindset, culture, or the dominant culture somehow includes, or these values, are superior to societies and countries and nations and cultures where those rights do not exist. Are not respected. Okay. And
no, I mean, of course, if you ask me whether progressive democratic values are superior to repressive authoritarian ones, of course, I believe that's superior.
And I understand that that can shift, throughout the years.
Yeah.
Also throughout the different periods of history. But in this, I mean, whichever country, respects those rights of the individual, groups, for me, are superior to other countries.
If you ask me which ideology is better, yes, of course, I would say this one. Yes.
Because this seems might seem contradictory, but sometimes, especially among people who define themselves as progressives, liberals, even leftists, whatever, they have this kind of dichotomy, so in which they really find lots of oppressions, in kind of already progressive and democratic society, all all kinds of oppression and repression and rights of whatever, of minorities being violated, whereas when it comes to those countries, where those freedoms and those rights are absolutely unthinkable, the rhetoric is something like, it's you cannot judge, it's like don't be arrogant, don't just try to exert your Eurocentric, or ethnocentric, superiority, but that's unfair, it's their habits, it's their customs, and you should respect them. It's like, wow, so are you only kind of concerned about the rights of not even the rights, or all this apparent oppressions, existing everywhere in countries where that does not happen on the doesn't really happen, and then being kind of completely being too tolerant towards those same rights, being blatantly and openly violated in other countries, it's like so is this concept of cultural relativism, where it's like no, it's like don't you shouldn't judge them,
well, I mean, I disagree with this. I definitely consider myself to be on the left. I consider myself a progressive, and I don't share those opinions. I'm not tolerant of ideologies which blatantly oppress, whether it's minority groups or certain religions, a certain sex, like women. Obviously, I do not support that. And so I disagree with those people who claim that they're on the left and yet, I don't know, try to avoid criticizing cultures which have opposing values to the ones they believe. I don't understand it. I think those people, maybe in an effort to seem as progressive as possible, they, for them, it's kind of like a competition to see who can be the most progressive. And in that way, they kind of lose their perspective and turn the other way and become anti-progressive. But for other cultures, I don't know. It's a super strange phenomenon that definitely I have noticed in the last decade or so, of people claiming to be ultra progressive and yet kind of focus on the wrong things. Especially, I have noticed that there are large groups of progressives that live in the US and Canada and other very developed, arguably progressive countries, criticizing the government or criticizing very small things that don't actually matter. And in that way, they lose kind of, their perspective on the bigger picture and don't really try to change anything that actually matters. It's kind of like poking things that don't matter because they want to be angry at the larger structures, because I think what they hate is imperialism, hegemony, white people. I don't know what they hate, but it's not the values that they claim to have. I don't know. It's kind of like turning to be anti-progressive in an effort to seem as progressive as possible.
Makes complete sense. Okay, so I think because so the only reason, for me it's so oxymoronic. Okay, it's so contradictory. It's so absolutely illogical. That the only explanation to that is of course these people, this ultra super progressive people, they see domination, sexism, racism, oppression everywhere. Okay, it's like small things. Okay, whatever. Okay, so everything becomes turns into micro sexism and whatever. But if overt and blatant stances of sexism, and rights of women, homosexuals being shattered, in those other countries, they don't oppose those because they identify that the root of the patriarchy is the white male, and imperialism, and as so if anything comes from the Judeo-Christian tradition and is somehow represented or embodied by white male, whereas in other countries they're not so white, so it is they're our so they're kind of victims too. Okay, so you shouldn't judge them because they are the victims of the whole of the patriarchal white male oppression and imperialistic ambitions.
I mean, I think those people probably have the best intentions, but they are misguided. I think it comes a lot from frustration. I don't know. I think there are people who maybe want to see a change in the world, but don't actually have the agency or the means to do it. So they focus on little things that they can criticize, and perhaps think that they can change those things. I don't know. It is a really strange phenomenon. And it is interesting to see that most of those ultra progressive people tend to be people from the majority dominant group, right? They tend to be white. They tend to be well off. And they're the ones that show the most rage, disdain with the way the system works, but they're the ones benefiting the most.
That is it. That is they're usually belong to they're usually very privileged people.
Because they have nothing. They have nothing of real, I don't know, concrete legitimacy to actually criticize in their life.
They're usually white, straight, heterosexual people who tell black homosexuals how to be a good black homosexual, and whatever.
It's super strange, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I don't want to criticize those people because I do think they have the best of intentions, but at the same time, their fervor, their passion could definitely go towards meaningful change. Speaking for people who are truly oppressed.
That's it. That is it.
Yeah.
Okay. This also we close this section. Okay. and because we could go on.
We could go on this forever. Trust me.
And another aspect I wanted to go through is the narrative. How the narrative towards Putin has shifted lately, especially in I would say more conservative media or more anti-progressive or more kind of right-wing media. So at the beginning of this conflict, or when this broke out at the beginning, there's a couple of guys I basically follow on YouTube or on the internet, because I think they are I like, like getting my information from different sources,
Yeah.
especially if that is somehow alternative media, okay, like that
Yeah.
doesn't really subscribe, okay, 100% to mainstream media, the mainstream narrative, okay. For some of them, okay, or especially like, well, in general, okay, kind of like more conservative media, the narrative towards Putin has shifted from, seeing him somehow of, I would say, of backlash, okay, against this wokeism, like this woke culture, because it's like, well, okay, look at the army, okay, look at the spots, look at the commercials of the Russian, Chinese army, okay, they don't have trans, they don't have like gay people, like, or they don't have, not that they don't have, it's that they don't really exacerbate, okay, they don't exacerbate that aspect of they don't want to, like, be so inclusive, okay, like whatever. And it's kind of more kind of like more traditional. So they saw in Putin, they saw in Russia how he somehow embraced, okay, the values of the masculinity, okay, he was like a real man, okay, unlike Justin Trudeau, who's like, he says like things like, people kind, or even like Biden, or even in my country, the socialist government. Because I think that is I would say the prevailing narrative, okay, the prevailing narrative in
conservatives seem to like Putin, for sure.
But now it's like, now the beginning, like at the beginning, they seem to they saw him as a backlash against this dominant, well, kind of, so what they would call woke culture, and more kind of embracing more masculine traits, okay, more kind of like belligerence and patriotic and military fervor. But now, of course, there's like, wow, he's like, and now he's a communist. He's like, he's he's the worst, So I'm not sure if you had noticed that as well.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, it's no secret that the right wing in the US, I mean, I'm sure in other places as well, did not see Russia as an enemy. I don't think, I mean, perhaps openly, they, in the past at least, they would still think of Russia as, the West's enemy, or at least competitor. But they would, I mean, I've always noticed that they would compliment Putin, or they would kind of make him out to be this, take no shit kind of guy, say what you think, don't, I don't know, just they saw him as a strong man, right? A powerful man.
Yeah.
And since this invasion has started, I've definitely seen a change in narrative. Now they seem to be condemning him. They think that he's crazy or whatnot. And my opinion on this, my guess is that a lot of these conservative pundits, at least those who speak on the news, right? Fox News, whatever conservative media you.
Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson, who used to be Putin's biggest fan,
has now.
Go ahead.
I think his current take is that anyway, like, I mean, Putin has has like he might have changed his narrative towards Putin, but the main message he wants to get across that America shouldn't step in.
Yes, I mean,
like, so what's America's business? Again, that word, okay? Like, let the Europeans figure out what their problems.
I'm a little bit cynical in this case, because I think that there's some evidence that Russia has financially backed a lot of the conservative wing in the US. I think that a lot of them
is there actual evidence?
There's some evidence. I mean, I think especially with Trump or the Republican Party or his administration, there was proof that they were in talking in conjunction with the Kremlin, the Russian media. I mean, it's no secret that Russian bots on social media have kind of like drive up conservative talking points and all of that. And I do think that Russia has kind of used social media warfare, let's say, to create division among people on social media and within the government, I think, as well. I mean, maybe I would have to look again at the evidence, but I'm pretty sure there has been evidence that the Russian government has colluded with the right wing, Republican Party, whatever, that they have some Republicans in their pockets. So I think that some of this, maybe it doesn't account for all of the change in narrative, but I think that some of it is because those right-wing people, those right-wing what's it called, pundits are no longer receiving paychecks from Russia, and so they had to change their point of view.
They're claiming back their
yes. I mean, now they're no longer being financially supported by Russia. They have no motive to be on Russia's side, right? So I think they're going along with the mainstream opinion of Russia bad, US good. And that's it. I think they're just keeping along with whatever gives them more views, more profits. And that's it. But that's my cynical point of view. I don't know if that's why their narrative has changed regarding Putin and what he's doing. But I don't know. What's your opinion? Why do you think their narrative has changed?
Probably they have been, kind of like taken by surprise to how far Putin was willing to go. Okay, right. How condemnable. Okay, yeah. Because like, even if they thought, okay, that there was like this kind of like new like the second coming of the new manly masculine man, and so compared to pussies like just Justin or Biden or Pedro Sanchez, okay, and that now they are obviously repelled. Okay, I think that they are the American the American viewers, like the American people, including the majority of the viewers, okay, are absolutely appalled, kind of repelled, okay, by what they are seeing, okay. And I don't, and again, I sometimes tend to be skeptical with what we see on in the news, okay, because of course,
yeah, for sure,
I think that objectively, his, in my view, I don't want to sound like I'm condoning Vladimir Putin, because he's acting, at least from what I can see in most sources of information, as a murderous tyrant,
Yeah.
But they know that their public, their viewers, no longer kind of like do not subscribe to kind of like really have any kind of sympathy towards Putin. So I think that that is like they're kind of they can like kind of like really like take sides with Putin anymore, because that would antagonize their viewers. And but I really don't know about like I don't really know about those connections that you mentioned. Again, I'm kind of a little bit
I would
versed on American policy, but I'm not to that extent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make it seem like I'm some conspiracy nut who believes in that, but that's what I've heard. And in fact, Trump, the first time that he was impeached was because he refused to give Ukraine 400 million in aid. Because when Trump was in power, that's when Russia initially started the not invasion, but they annexed Crimea, right? So back then Ukraine had asked Trump for some military aid or humanitarian aid, and Trump refused. And a lot of people think it's because he was in Putin's pocket. And of course, if he's following Putin's orders, he would never allow any aid to go to Ukraine. So like, that's, I mean, I think there's some evidence out there that a lot of the US right wing is in the pocket of Russia, but I have no proof at the moment right now to show for it. So that's just one point of view, but I could be wrong. It could be something else, that's just one
side of the picture only.
Yeah.
Okay,
for sure.
There's just three more questions I would like to address, and kind of like briefly, because I know, I'm aware you have like some.
No, don't worry. I'm good for time. So.
Okay. So there's one question, is like, and again, in relation to this last one, like, figures like Vladimir Putin, all the narrative. Okay, now he's the bad guy, the evil guy. I want to ask you something, okay? And do you think that that kind of totalitarian tendency, or that totalitarian ambition, okay, is a trait of most, kind of like presidents and rulers? It's like I'm gonna like rephrase it. For example, so we think, I said, that we, in a previous question, we were talking about those cultures, or those systems of beliefs and democracies, which are intrinsically superior to others, because they ascribe to some fundamental values based on, respect to rights, blah, blah, blah. So in the surface, so I'm saying because we take for granted that our leaders would never go to that extreme, And for example, I'm thinking of your president, Justin Trudeau, okay, again, who's a guy who on the surface, okay, he seems like very progressive. He says things like, you know, people kind instead of mankind, and he's like very inclusive, okay, so he's kind of the uber, okay, progressive guy, okay, and he for sure caters for inclusivity and includes all the different pronouns, okay, that you have to use to address people. And so, yeah, in theory, he's like a very kind of like, you know, he embraces, okay, like, you know, all this progressiveness.
Yeah.
And the same could be said, okay, so our government, our current government here in Spain is kind of like, I think it also subscribes to the majority of those views, okay, regarding gender identity and, you know, whatever, feminism.
Yeah, I would say most of Europe probably subscribes.
Most of definitely. Okay, yeah. I think it's the prevailing you know, like, you know, mindset or narrative or, you know, agenda.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, okay, so we say, okay, well, my president is so progressive, so liberal, so respectful towards minorities, and he would never, okay, like turn into a totalitarian, you know, like authoritarian tyrant, okay. But at the same time, and again, I don't have too much information about this, okay, but I think that your president, my president, in most European countries, the president, like the governments, have definitely shown like totalitarian, you know, kind of like streaks, traits. You know, they have like this kind of totalitarian tics and authoritarian, and for me, it was very evident with COVID, you know, with the pandemic. You know, for example, in Canada, you freezing and blocking accounts of those convoys in Ottawa. Okay, so people were kind of like, wow, this is extremely fascistic, you know.
Right.
So my question is like, even though you say, okay, he's like, I mean, that's unthinkable. Okay, that would never happen here. He's not like the kind of guy. But do you think that when one you know, takes over power, okay, they feel kind of like drunk for power, okay, drunk with power, sorry, okay, to the extent that they could like this kind of totalitarian, you know, like desire somehow starts to emerge?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's kind of a human trait. And there's also that famous saying that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I do believe that while some governments or some leaders, they seem unlikely to turn into this kind of dictator, authoritarian leader, totalitarian leader, whatever you want to say, I think that given the right conditions, given the right scapegoat, any government could turn totalitarian. It's just like you said in COVID, while I was not against most of the
mandates
imposed, at least, you know, in the first, let's say, a year of the pandemic when things seemed very bad, we didn't have the vaccines, etc. I did support most of those because I thought it was a necessary evil, let's say. But yeah, afterwards, it seemed like just a measure to continue to exert control and power when it was no longer necessary. So I do agree that even the most unlikely governments can definitely instill some totalitarian policies. And it is scary that they can just do it and we can't do anything about it. So I do agree that it's probably possible for any leader to turn totalitarian given the right conditions or the right scapegoat to blame, as in Canada with those truckers, right? They seem to be a perfect scapegoat. You know, they were, I would say they were in the wrong. However, I do not agree with what measures were taken. I think they could have been solved in a better way instead of freezing their accounts. But anyway, that's a different topic. But I do think that that showed that even a progressive, liberal prime minister like Trudeau can just immediately exert his power to stop an entire group of people from having the rights that the rest of the population does. It was easy. He just said, oh, well, we're freezing your accounts. We're going to arrest you. So that's it. That's just going to happen.
So, and I think that they have this kind of tendency, okay, or this propensity, this inclination, because they know they can do it. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, that's the scary thing, right? We trust our governments to do what's best for their citizens, right? And so when a government takes a measure like that, you think, well, I mean, my first thought when I saw that, my first instinct was to say, well, yeah, those people deserve it. You know, like they suck. You know, we didn't even have COVID, like, or COVID measures were about to end like a month from that protest. I was like, why are they protesting? Like, they already announced COVID measures are not going to be in place anymore. So why are they protesting? They're just, they're white supremacists, a lot of them, whatever. So like my first instinct was to say like, yeah, they deserve it. Like whatever happens, I don't care. Mm. But then seeing how Canada, the Canadian government, took, it was like an incentive for them to just take away those people's rights. Mm-hmm. That's when I was thinking, this could have some, this could be like a precedent for some future. Like, what if, for example, it was another movement, like a workers' union or some movement that I believe in? What if I went to a protest and suddenly they froze my bank account, right? Or decided to arrest me? So then
that is it. Okay.
So when I was thinking about that, like, oh, what if they suddenly decide that I'm the bad group?
Yeah. What if the tables are turned? Okay. Because
right.
I remember like during the beginning of like the outbreak of the pandemic. Okay. People were people who supported. Okay. The current government in Spain, for example, or in other countries. Okay. They were happy. Okay. That their guys could enforce. Okay.
Right.
Especially because they were guys. Okay. So, okay. It was like their team was winning.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And so they were happy. But I would say, what if the tables are turned? Okay. Yeah. So it's like, in any case, whoever you happen to support, we need to make sure that we take away this power that the state has to exert their kind of like tyrannical power, because and because I respect your views, you respect mine, everyone should respect each other's views and everyone else's views. But don't be happy because your team is winning. Right. Because if we continue this trend, your team someday might not be winning, and you would, and the tables will be turned. Yeah. You understand? So for me, it was like, come on, like don't have that kind of mindset, like, this kind of, I don't know, vindictive, kind of like,
it's scary.
Yeah, it's fuck you. Okay, we are winning. Okay, so yes, I'm happy that my team is like enforcing you. Okay.
Yeah. No, and I mean, like I said, that was my first instinct, because people in Canada were not on my team. So I was like, yeah, fuck them, Yeah. But then I realized, well, what if it was my movement that was being blockaded and my rights were taken away? Would I be happy then that my government had that much control and power? No, obviously not.
Of course.
So yeah, you really have to kind of take a step back from, primitive, in-group, out-group thing, and really take a glance at like the bigger picture and put yourself in those people's shoes, and what would happen if you wanted to take a stand against the government. What would happen then? Yeah, for sure. So.
Okay, I have another question. Okay, two more questions, guys. Okay, well, two more questions, and I hope, okay, for a happy, peaceful resolution. One of the questions is, it says something like, it's about historical revisionism. Okay, because I think it's very interesting. It's like characters, for example, and the concept of historical revisionism. I'm following different podcasts about history. I love history, by the way. And for example, I didn't get this historical revisionism, okay, where like acts of the past should be judged with the eyes of the present. Okay, and it's like, because by today's standards, probably Christopher Columbus would be a racist, Alexander the Great would be
everyone would be a racist,
genocidal maniac, okay. It would be like, Julius Caesar, and let alone Genghis Khan.
Oh my. Yeah.
However, these characters are somehow studied and almost revered. Okay, like there are biographies written about them, many, and people, and historians respect and admire. Okay, their role as strategists. Okay, Napoleon Bonaparte, for example. Bonaparte. Okay, their greatness. Okay, their grandeur cannot be challenged. Okay, fun. But do you think that books of the future would talk about Putin in that way? You understand? So in the end, he's just a guy wanting to, if you think of Napoleon Bonaparte, he wanted to conquer Europe. Okay, he wanted to have Europe. Okay, that was his ambition. Okay, and he had this crazy, and he was apparently a brilliant, okay, like strategist. Okay, he was like a privileged man in that sense. Okay, and so it's somehow admired and worshipped. And do you think that the same kind of, I don't know, like, but because I can see that Putin is doing that exactly. Okay, it's just ambitioning the expansion of the Soviet or the Russian territory.
I mean, I think that's a really interesting question, and it's kind of, I mean, it's hard to know if he's going to be written in history as a villain or a hero. I mean, I think, you know, as they say, history is always written by the victors, right? So I feel like since Putin is on the wrong side, I mean, at least if it's history that's going to be written by the West, I think he's going to be written in as a crazy, maniacal dictator, imperialist, jingoist, crazy man. I do think it will depend. Like, I think for the Russian people, he's revered by many. Because again, due to the fall of the Soviet Union, a lot of those countries were in shambles. Everything kind of became a mess. There was poverty, there was no unity, and a lot of people say, like people who lived through the fall of the Soviet Union, that Putin kind of brought everyone together again. He saved the economy. So a lot of people see him as a savior. So I think it depends how he's going to be viewed in history, depending on who's writing that history. I think the West is going to view him as a villain, and Russia perhaps will make him out to be a martyr. If he dies, whether he dies or doesn't die, I feel like some Russians are going to see him as a martyr, like a great man who tried to make Russia great again. And so I think it will very much depend. I don't know. What do you think?
It's hard, you know, it's hard because like unless we rewrite all those books and then we basically judge everyone else, like Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, as if we will have to go because otherwise that would be you know, hypocrisy, you know. If we like, you just say, oh yes, Napoleon Bonaparte, he might have murdered like invaded like and conquered many countries, and but he was a good strategist, he was like, you know, undeniable, like, you know, military strategist, and then Vladimir Putin is essentially doing the same. He wants to build back
the same empire, ambitions.
Same ambitions, and I understand like people who have this kind of like patriotic or has this nostalgia for the former, like, you know, collapsing empire. It's like in Spain, we used to be an empire in the 1500s or the 1500s. It's like, you know, we would like, you know, so of course we refer to the times of Philip II as like the, you know, the epitome or the pinnacle, of the Spanish Empire. And some people are kind of like nostalgic of that, you know.
For sure.
So
the glory days.
Putin is essentially doing the same. Modern warfare, like much more, you know, kind of like powerful, you know, weaponry. It's the same, you know.
It is, and I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how he's remembered. I really do think it'll depend on who writes his story. You know,
definitely. I'm gonna ask you a question. It's like, you know, one of the symptoms, probably one of the, I mean, because to me, you know, we had lived throughout many years of like relative peace, as you say. There might be like some ongoing conflicts in the world, but ever since, I don't know, like, you know, probably like those big wars, Europe and the US, Canada, they have lived, no one was thinking about war. Sometimes I'm made to think that probably war is humans' natural habitat. I don't want to be like that pessimistic, but you know, that we have been, you know, by, you know, there's the saying that, you know, hard times make you know, strong men build great societies, like breed weak men and weak men, you know, like turn like you know, kind of like generate you know, weak or bad, you know, societies. So I think that as we have lived this period of relative peace and welfare and wealth and comfort, we have been focused on sometimes insignificant, as we mentioned before, like insignificancies. We have been like focusing on insignificancies, and I don't know, and it's kind of, we were kind of blinded, and I think this is somehow the death of innocence to some extent. I'm going to show you, because I sometimes play a video, you know, about, you know, which ties into gender identity. It's an interview with like Professor Camille Paglia, one of like, it's kind of like controversial figure, but this is kind of like 7 or 8 years ago. I don't know, 7 or 6 years ago. I don't know. But look at how relevant, okay, her, assertions were.
Okay.
Can you see now the thumbnail?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, give me a second. I need to like make sure. Yeah, this. Okay, okay. Oh yes. Still can see it?
Yeah, I can.
Of a civilization just before it falls. Right, which is that we are all very tolerant, and we are not passionate, okay, but there are bands of extremely passionate vandals and destroyers, who are moving around the edges of the civilization and who bring it down, okay. And in this preoccupation, it seems to me, with gender issues and with gender identity and so on, okay. I think it's it's extremely limited in the long run, and in this hyper self-consciousness about who am I, okay, who am I exactly, where exactly on the gender, like a ruler in front of me, where exactly on the spectrum, okay, am I located in terms of gender? Well, I mean, this is a kind of navel gazing, okay, the time when ISIS is beheading people. Okay, and in the Mideast, it's like a kind of a madness. Okay, like self-absorption. Right? So I mean, the biggest problem.
Do you get it?
Yeah. No, I mean, as we talked before about those ultra progressive people who tend to focus on the small, meaningless things, I think it's only because they have the luxury to do so, because they don't have any, they're not in any real world danger. They don't have to worry about their safety. They don't have to worry about where they're going to eat tomorrow or sleep tomorrow, or if they're going to be killed for some belief that they have. So instead they have to focus on maybe, inner problems or inner struggles that they have and kind of like project it outwards. I don't know exactly what happens, but I do agree with her that it is. I mean, in societies that are in peace, like most of the West, we don't have to worry about our safety or whether we're going to be oppressed for our beliefs, because we have free speech. We're able to express exactly what we think. We know we're most likely going to be accepted no matter what we believe, how we think. So instead, we focus on the very small, insignificant things and pick at and, criticize things that in a country in the Middle East or Africa or another war-torn, oppressive country, they don't even have the luxury to think about. Like, they don't understand. They would listen to us talk about these issues and think that we're crazy. Like, what is that? What are you talking about? So I think she's right. I think we have the luxury to worry about things like that.
I think that the point, apart from the how banal, okay, how insignificant, how shallow that seems in comparison to real problems. I think the point she was making is that weakens us, okay. So being so blinded to what's going out there, okay, and having this kind of, naive, okay, vision of the world where everyone is like, concerned about all this kind of, I don't know, minor problems, in my opinion, and everyone else in the world, okay, subscribe to those views, and they're all kind of like catering for, like all this kind of crazy intellectual, kind of college debates. That weakens us because that blinds us to reality. And in the event of a war, like you kind of, you only react when you're punched in the face, like, fuck, man. So I was like, that hurt, so it is like that weakens us because it blinds us to reality. So it is like, this kind of like hyper consciousness, focus on this insignificant, small, trivial.
I mean, I will say that I hope one day most of the world is in a state of peace. I hope that one day we all have the luxury to think about these stupid things, because I mean, I don't care. I mean, if these people want to criticize people not using the right pronouns or whatever, that's fine. I don't care. I wish they would focus on other things, but I hope in the future we live in such a great peaceful time that we don't have to like always look out for, where the next conflict is going to be. Like, I want people to be complacent. I don't want them to worry about and anxious about the next conflict. I would prefer people to be at peace,
of course. Okay.
So like, of course, right now it seems stupid for people to focus on these little things, but I look forward to a time when we can all just focus on stupid things.
Okay. So that would be a good sign. Okay, if like if we have the luxury, if everyone in the world has the luxury of like focusing on being like triggered for not having being addressed with the right pronoun. Okay, that's a good sign. Okay, like there might be somewhat kind of people that we consider like to be banal, trivial, weak, whatever, but that's better than being killed and being denied your rights.
Right, like it's better to think about what your pronouns are than when you're going to get your next meal or whether you're going to be beheaded tomorrow.
Of course.
So that's my opinion.
So just to like finish, okay, so do you think that so I would like to finish with some kind of words of hope.
Yes, please.
No, because I think the prediction the prediction you made at the beginning is like, in the end, I really hope, I honestly, there's like for like, like March the 4th, 2022, and I hope that this doesn't, that diplomacy or at least, like diplomatic solutions prevail.
Yeah, me too.
Like give peace a chance,
Yes.
Peace a chance.
If only we could. If only all of us could live in peace. Yeah.
It was a complete pleasure. Hanny, will I see you in like further episodes?
Yes, of course.
I will be delighted to have your wisdom and your presence. Okay, and you spice up this with like super like interesting expressions in English. Okay, because like my students, when I will make a further video just trying to break down some of the super cool language we and especially you have jazzed up the conversation with. Okay, and
yes,
so it's a privilege to have you here. Okay?
Thank you. I would love to join you in the future. This was really fun and insightful.
Yeah, definitely.
Really great. Yeah.
Okay. So I will see you soon.
Yes.
So that was the interview. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did. And and of course, Hanny's contribution was absolutely invaluable and absolutely amazing. Okay, so it's a pleasure to have her here on the podcast, and for sure we will be delighted with her presence and her contribution and her wisdom in many more episodes. In a different video, I'm going to be kind of dissecting and breaking down this very interesting and super specific language and vocabulary that we used to talk about the topic of national identity, kind of like using this conflict, this kind of war or invasion of Ukraine by Russia as a pretext. And basically what I'm going to be doing is like, looking at the specific expressions and grammatical structures that you can use, that you can take advantage of, just to make to level up your language and your English skills, and to, give you, just to level up to really advanced English. So that is it. I hope you had fun, watching this interview, and, just keep basically do not be afraid of having conversations with people that might have different opinions from yours. Okay, don't be afraid of divergent dissenting opinions, because those are the kind of conversations, in those kind of conversations that is where we actually grow. Okay, and we become more knowledgeable, and instead of just being stuck in an echo chamber where you're basically having conversations with people that think and say exactly the same as you, don't be afraid, of having this conversation, sort of exchanging ideas with people that might have even diametrically, whose ideas might be diametrically opposed to yours. That was not the case with Hanny and and the conversation we had. There's many things we had in common, or we believed, we agreed upon. But at some point we had divergent, opinions about this or that topic, So make sure that is not an impairment, just to kind of like be willing to converse and to debate and to discuss different aspects with a person, And that's all for now. Make sure that if you found some of the different language that we used to talk about this topic interesting, make sure you check the book Speaking Mastery, because we have something like 30, almost 40 topics with lots of interesting, like very specific, concrete expressions, phrasal verbs, idioms, vocabulary, grammatical structures, okay? Just to make sure that you acquire advanced English skills. So that was all, and I will see you in a different episode. Stay tuned and, like, have fun while, learning, and never give up learning, okay? See you soon.